Welcome back to another edition of the Knight Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie O'Leary, and special guest for the program to talk everything Rutgers, Michigan State this weekend, Mike Jones, the co-host of the Can't Read, Can't Write podcast. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We'll get into that matchup and everything going around this game. But first, this podcast is presented to you by Knight and Day Apparel. Hey, Rutgers fans, get ready to slam dunk your style with Knight and Day Apparel. Cheer on the Scarlet Knights this basketball season with our exclusive Rutgers gear. From trend-setting designs to lifestyle garments, we've got you covered with everything you need to support your team in comfort and flair. Stand up from the crowd and show your passion for Rutgers basketball with designs that celebrate every dribble, dunk, and victory. Use our promo code Rutgers Rivals to get 10% off. Don't wait. Head to Knight and Day Apparel today and get in on the action. Go Knights. We are also brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball to NHL, UFC, and MMA. Head to BetOnline today to get on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. So, Mike, year one in Jonathan Smith's tenure, how has the season gone so far, and how does the fan base kind of feel about this team and program at the moment?
It's a great question, and it's wild. I think the Vegas over-under opened at 4.5. I think if you asked most Spartan fans, we were talking somewhere between 5-7 and 7-5 as a realistic expectation. And then something happened. You saw potential with this team. You saw that there was some talent there, and they just couldn't quite execute the way that I think folks expected. Not to peek behind the curtain, but before we were recording, we were talking about not giving permission to very young players. We have a freshman quarterback, or a redshirt freshman. No, actually, he's a true sophomore. Sorry, but who just turned 19 middle of the season. Our best wide receiver was having permission slip signed for most of the season because he was 17 to go on road games. So, I think our pod included got really frustrated at points in the season because you can see that they could be better. But spoiler alert, our offensive line is still not very good after, seemingly 8 years now. So it's been a rough season. And now we're playing for bowl eligibility, which is, to bring it all back, exactly where people thought we might be doing if you looked at the season schedule ahead of time.
So I know you guys technically won last week against Purdue, but it kind of
It didn't feel like it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It kind of felt more like a loss than a win. They kind of just seem like they're kind of going through the motions right now. What seems to be the problem, I guess?
Yeah, I don't think it's hard to say that they're going through the motions, and here's why. Again, I've talked about some of the youth at some skill positions. Our offensive line has got some seniority in the center and left guard, but is starting first-time starters on the tackles. We have a tackle who's now playing right guard because our first and second string right guard went down in games 1 and 2 of the season. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of lack of production out of the run game that's been hit or miss at times. And then in the secondary, we have now, I believe, 3 true freshmen starting in the secondary now because we are just obliterated back there. I think there's questions being asked about some of the decision making by way of play calling, but I say that I think as a pretty realistic person they're just young and hurt, and it's a first season of implementing a new scheme. Though Jonathan Smith, to your question about the feeling good, was asked specifically at the Purdue game and more broadly about our differential in points scored in the third quarter. I think we're negative 156 on the season.
Wow.
Yeah, in the third quarter. And he's getting after the coaches about it. What's going on here? Why is this coming out of the half such a problem? So I don't know. It didn't feel great beating a 1-9, now 1-10 Purdue team, but a win's a win, and now we get to play for bowl eligibility.
Yeah, and it was, if it wasn't for a drop pass late in that game, it might have ended up being a loss too. It was.
I'd feel bad if that didn't happen to me at least 3 times this season. Anyway.
Yeah, football can be brutal. You mentioned you're led by a true sophomore, Aiden Childs. He he kind of reminded me of a little bit of Gavin Wimsatt in the sense where he's like a one-read passer. You know, if he doesn't have that read open, he kind of panics in the pocket. Is that been something that's happened like all year, or was it just like my 2 or 3 games that I've seen of him this year?
It might be a little bit of your sample bias. I mean, though I believe he's now got 12 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. At one point in time, that might have been 6 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. So
Oh, wow.
we've seen growth through the year, which you would expect out of a first-time starter, particularly one so young. He has personally infuriated me on a number of occasions. He's getting a little bit better at his reads. You're seeing progress there. You're seeing less staring down of a receiver, which has been great progress. And something that they brought into the fold after our first bye week is that we're now seeing a lot more QB keepers, sort of option reads for Aiden Childs, who is slippery and has some wheels. He just sometimes doesn't run like he knows that he's got wheels. So, but we're seeing growth there. And he was the number 2 overall prospect in the transfer portal this past year. He can make NFL throws. Like there's a reason that he was so highly touted. It's just reps and development, right?
Yep, totally.
Yeah. Running back room, led by a former Rutgers guy, of course, Kayron Adams. I know Shiano said earlier this week they would have loved to kept him, but obviously Isaiah Pacheco and then Kyle Monangai, it's hard to get everyone carries. On top of it, Nate Carter's had a pretty good career at UConn before going to Michigan State. What kind of 1-2 punch do those kind of guys provide?
Yeah, well, so first, as it relates to Kayron Lynch Adams, he actually was interviewed, I think, preseason and talked about leaving Rutgers, and says he wished he didn't do it. It was youth, it was impatience, right? And so I think he went to UMass after that, right? And then bounced over our way. But talk about at least knowing him as the mature player that he is, has a lot of perspective, seemingly really good dude, who regrets the decision to leave Rutgers. But there are some ways that they're very similar backs, but Nate Carter has greatly improved as a pass catching threat out of the backfield. And you're never sure game to game who's going to get more touches. They talked about it as a 50-50 split, but what you see in game is that usually one back is more dominant than the other. And it doesn't seem to do with like riding the hot hand per se. It's they just have different plays that they're accountable for by and large. And so some games you'll see Lynch Adams, rack up 15 carries to, Carter 6. And then other times it's the other way around. Lynch Adams, though, I love as a running back. Great for he seems like a dude on a busted player who can still get you 1 yard. He has a great ability to fall forward, which has been, it's so bad the number of times that they're met in the backfield that, I think there was one game we had the number of yards per carry. I'm going to mess up the stat. Point being is that they were the yards after contact was impressive considering they were getting like 4.7 yards after contact, but averaging 1.7 yards per carry. Like that's how far in the backfield our dudes are getting hit. So anyway,
I'm looking at your
stats. Great
here.
running backs. Great running backs.
You're 112th in the nation in tackles for loss allowed at almost 7 per game, and 118th in sacks allowed per game at 3.1.
Sounds right.
But let's talk about your wide receiver room. It's led by a true freshman in Nick Marsh, who was a highly touted recruit. Your second leading receiver is Foster. I forget his first name. It's kind of a name I've never seen before. Just talk about the receiver room and what the strengths are of the receivers in general.
Yeah, this is one of those real head scratchers because, without being, as you're watching on TV, right, you're not normally able to see route progression because it's happening downfield away from the ball. Mm-hmm. There are times that it seems like this wide receiver room is underwhelming because Aiden Childs is not getting enough time to throw them the ball, which is an offensive line problem, and then maybe a play calling problem that we're running that deep. But look, Nick Marsh is wildly talented. I believe he's the third leading wide receiver among freshmen behind what's Serena Williams's relation at Alabama and the stud at Ohio State. Like, I mean, he's up there in terms of talent on a subpar offense. And so Nick Marsh absolutely has the ability to take a top off the defense and make some explosive plays. Montori Foster is a great every down dude. This will be his senior game or senior day game. Like, I expect, a great performance out of him. And then one wide receiver not mentioned who you might hear his name called is Isaiah Johnson, number 11, I believe. Super fast, kind of a slot guy, gadget guy that you will see pop up, with a catch or two or game that usually is of consequence. They're not normally like little things out of AZ. So wide receiver room, I like it. There's room to grow. Another room that's a little banged up, but hopefully we can get some passes off. I know that's not what you all want, but hoping for a few.
So I kind of have to bring it up. Nick Marsh, I had a hot take on Nick Marsh about a year ago. I don't know if you saw it on social media or not, but went pretty viral among this.
I probably retweeted it and said something terrible about you.
Yeah, no, probably. I believe it. I was like, I don't think he has the ability, that next level speed at that. Once he gets the ball in space, I thought he would struggle at the high school level. Now, mind you, his mom quote tweeted it. The entire Spartan Nation quote tweeted it. They're still tweeting at me every week, telling me his stat lines, and I'm like, "Geez, man, you guys have a relentless fan base." But
we are petty.
Yeah,
we are. When you are in the shadow of U of M, you will take every slight very personally. So
yeah, no, not good. But anyway, moving on from that. Tight end Jack Velling, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, left the game last week, head injury. His backup came in, didn't do much of anything, it seemed like. I could be wrong on that. Maybe you saw something different, but
no, I would say actually he did actively bad.
Okay. You said it, not me. I just didn't want to be mean. But what's his status for this week? And is the actively bad guy going to be the starter now?
Actively bad. He's a redshirt freshman. I'm going to give him, but he literally ran into Nick Marsh on one route. It was not great. So Brendan Parachek's the backup who will get reps in the event that Velling's out. I was a little surprised that they carted Velling off as quickly as they did. Apparently he's cleared. As of Monday, when Smith spoke to the media, he'd cleared all the protocols, was in team meetings. They were doing a couple other evaluations. Velling last year was the top tight end in terms of touchdown receptions. This year, it hasn't been there. I don't think he's seen the end zone. I'd have to look it up. But it, unfortunately, to the conversation about Childs, like the tight ends just haven't been getting a ton of touches this year.
So before we move over to defense, if you were to pick out a single guy on offense, you need a big play, whether it be through the air or on the ground. Who are you picking to make that big play on offense?
How many yards do I need?
Let's say it's 3rd and 7, gotta have it situation.
I'm gonna pick Aiden Childs. His ability with his feet has been pretty incredible. And then last week against Purdue, he learned a harsh lesson about making sure you got all the way to the sticks. So, but he has been able to convert on some 3rd and longs in a way because he still has the arm talent that you have to respect it. So that's who I'm going with.
Switching over to defense, you guys got 3 sacks last week against Purdue. You didn't have a sack since September. Yeah, that's looking at that right. So that's 6 games in a row without a sack. Sounds eerily familiar to Rutgers, but what seemed to be the difference this past week?
It couldn't be that familiar because I believe it was since the 1990s the last time someone
No,
bent
not
that
as
long.
bad, just close to that.
And I don't want to pick on anyone, but I think it has to do with the fact that it was Purdue.
Fair.
And the other thing is that, and I'm sure we'll chat about it, our secondary is so depleted right now that Joe Rossi, our defensive coordinator, at times was bringing 6 because you either have to bring 3 and drop everybody back to support the freshman, or you got to bring 6 and hope it gets home. And so I think that was the sort of natural consequence of it being Purdue and the extra man.
So you mentioned Joe Rossi, another former Rutgers guy. What have you guys thought of his defense in year 1 of being defensive coordinator for Michigan State?
It's been great. I mean, in comparison to Scotty Hazelton last year, particularly considering how beat up this team is. And, preseason we lost Simeon Barrow to Miami and Derek Harmon to Oregon, who are both starters on the defensive line for those teams. So, didn't have bad landing spots and are starters. So, we've done a great job, all things considered, containing the run. I know that's going to be a huge test for us this week against Rutgers. But that's been a positive. And considering how depleted the secondary is, I don't know how much I could complain. Joe Rossi was just nominated for a Broyles Award, or as a finalist for the Broyles Award. So having a better season than I realized, apparently.
I feel like every Power 5 team gets the Broyles nominee.
I was
Like
gonna
it's just
say,
there's
our-
like 70. Like
Our Broyles Award nominee is Demir Shaw, who's our running backs coach, who in fairness probably deserves it, given the development we've seen under him for Kyle Monungai. But it was just surprising because I didn't, one, realize that the finalists were already getting whittled down to, and two, I didn't think we would have a guy who reached that echelon. So yeah, it was
Same.
strange.
yeah, pretty crazy.
Defensively, you guys, you talked, we'll get to the secondary in a minute, but you guys have had relative health at the linebacker position. Who would you say stands out the most between Turner, Halliday, and Bogle at linebacker?
It's for sure Turner. Bogle's actually going to be playing more of a rush end role, so he'll be up on the line. You'll probably see, depending on what Rutgers trots out, you're going to likely see Turner, Halliday, and Hall is my guess, just for run stopping purposes. But Turner, look, as a transfer, came in, became a captain. You see it when he speaks to the media. Liked on both sides of the ball, great communicator, and it looks like a grown man who will blow things up, and does. So I would say he's probably offense versus defense, the dude that is going to be of most consequence against Rutgers.
You said cluster of injuries in the secondary before. If I count this correctly, 6 guys either questionable or out on the year.
Yeah, if I can just give me a second. So we have, I'm just trying to find the last availability, that report that we had. It was, so we've lost in game 1, I believe, we lost Dylan Tatum, who was, there we go, got it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Dylan Tatum, starting safety. Malik Spencer, we lost starting safety. Amorian Smith lost his mother to cancer and is now the primary guardian for his 6 siblings. So he's been not playing very much, understandably so.
Mm-hmm.
Starting cornerback in Chance Rutger and Charles Brantley are both out. Reserves, Caleb Coley, Jeremiah Hughes are both out. It's been brutal. And so, yeah, we've got now, with 3 of your 4 safeties out, we've got true freshmen that are starting back there. I think I'm missing some people who are just out for the season, and so they're no longer on the availability reports. But it's young. It's really young. So great for next year, maybe. But it's been, I'll say this. For as dudes who wouldn't have ever gotten reps except for in garbage time because they're just that young, they're holding themselves well. Is it a downgrade? Yes, but am I apoplectic about it? No, they're doing great.
Yeah, Rutgers is experiencing a similar string of injuries. I think we've probably lost 10 or 11 guys at least who are either starters or solid contributors for the season. I think Shiano lists them intentionally on the availability report as out for the season, just to kind of
empathy,
use as empathy and as an emphasis. You look at the availability report, who do we got on there? I noticed you guys now have 2 Jalen Thompsons starting on the defense, which has got to be a little frustrating to talk about. But
which one am I yelling at right now? But yeah.
So if you were to look 1 through 11 starting defense, you need a big play. Same thing as offense. Who are you going to? Who do you need the big play from? Whether it be in the secondary breaking up a pass or along the defensive line getting a havoc backfield play. Who are you choosing?
Yeah, I think Jordan Turner is going to be the most important player on defense in this particular matchup. But if Michigan State's running away with it or is really causing issues, I'm going to say Bogle. and it's Bogle getting around the edge, whether that's to the play side on a run and getting a tackle for a loss, or getting to the quarterback. I'm going to go with Bogle as we're having a great game if that's happening.
Is there anything we haven't talked about defensively that you think is an important point of emphasis for this game, or you think we covered it all?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I would ask you guys, your quarterback under pressure's completion rate is like 40%, right? So, I mean, are you seeing a lot of pressure against mid teams?
So
gauge my optimism here. If you're seeing pressure against not great teams, then maybe I can have hope.
So I think the bye week in November really was a turning point for the offense, because ever since they've gone to a more pass first look, and it's in part because Kyle Monungai had an injury against USC right before the bye. He got concussed. He's dealing with more than just that, but they had to, by necessity, go more through the air, and I think Ethan has seen a lot of growth the last few weeks. Last week, we probably would have won if he didn't fumble. He was having probably his best game as a Scarlet Knight before he fumbled in the third quarter. But I think because the offensive line isn't having to run block on 2/3 of its plays anymore, they're now having to run block on maybe half of their plays. I think that's freshened them up a bit, because we've dealt with injuries along the offensive line as well. So the last 3 weeks, I mean, I think we've given up like 1 or 2 sacks maybe. Before that, we were giving up 1 or 2 at least per game. So I think they've gotten a lot better along the offensive line since the bye.
I think those numbers are kind of skewed too a little bit, because if he does get pass rushed, he's just going to chuck it away. It's not even like he's making an attempt. Like, he knows to throw it away, like out of bounds completely.
He does stand in the pocket
too
and take shots. I mean, for better or for worse, we've had a few big third down conversions where, you're going to take a lick and he stands in there and waits that extra half second to let his guy get open. He's not just, running scared. He does have some moxie about him in that sense. So yeah, I think I feel good about, especially, for Michigan State, who hasn't had a lot of success pressuring the quarterback. I do feel good that we'll have time. Now, does that necessarily mean we'll connect? Maybe not, but I don't think if we do lose, it's going to be because the pressure along the front. But special teams wise, you got a familiar name in Jonathan Kim. Rutgers offered him out of the portal a few years ago when he was transferring from North Carolina. I see you guys have allowed a few blocked kicks this year, just 2. But how would you judge your special teams unit in general this year?
Yeah, so we're down our long snapper. We lost him maybe 4 games ago. So like at least one of those blocks came from a snap issue. I would say generally speaking, though, the coverage teams have not been fantastic this year. So, I'm sure we're going to talk about punters next, but like Eckley is flirting with danger every time. And it's, I mean, that's not on the punter, right? But Kim is, look, by way of college football kickers, you'd be thrilled to have him. Dude can, if you need 3 points with 0 time left from 65 yards, he might have your back. So, I can't overall complain. And frankly, we haven't been in enough scoring positions for me to really lose a ton of sleep about it. I'm more concerned about the punt coverage than anything else.
Well, you don't have to worry about that because we don't return punts. So you're good there. Basically a blocker fair catch team. So,
yeah.
Oh, I mean, when you're rushing the punter, you blocking that's what I lose sleep over.
Yeah, that's probably going to be a point of emphasis. I think Nebraska is probably the worst punt coverage unit in the Big Ten, and we blocked 2 against them, and that was something I'm sure that they really geared up for.
Can't have you stealing possessions. Not allowed.
I mean, Shiano's only blocked 43 punts since he's taken over, 10 over the last 2 years, which is only the most in college football. But you guys should be fine.
Yeah, great.
It's something he really
Harps
makes
on.
a huge focus on in terms of blocking kicks and punts.
What's the deal, before we move on, what's the deal with the co-special teams coaches? I've never seen co-special teams coaches.
Yeah, and I'm curious. I'm curious about some staff changes that might happen over the off season. But in theory, the way I understand it, as they've explained it, is that one is accountable for the offensive side of special teams, and the other one is accountable for the defensive side of special teams. So that's how they split it. So Chad Wilt, our rush ends coach, does the defensive side, and Keith Benafa, our running backs coach, does the offensive side.
Yeah, Chad Wilt, one-time Rutgers defensive line coach candidate. Yeah, it's so interesting because Rutgers doesn't have a special teams coordinator. They just have him off the field, basically.
Oh,
Yeah, I think,
well, maybe we should
is
steal
de
that.
facto.
There you
go. So before we get into predictions, I did want to debunk some rumors. I listened to your guys' podcast from this week, and you had two things that I just wanted to correct. You had said something along the lines of Rutgers students need to drive on a highway to go to the bars.
That's true.
It's not true. Let me throw the caveat. If you wanted to go to the bars after a sporting event, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the majority of our students live within walking distance a lot of those bars, so I just wanted to throw that caveat out there.
We went to those bars.
The
shoes on those students are filthy.
Oh yeah.
My God.
100%.
It is gross. There's a lot of dive bars.
Great dive bars, though. Great dive bars. A lot of respect.
The other thing you said was that we don't know where the first football game was played.
I did not say this.
Okay, so I just want to correct it because they have like even on like the page on the athletics site, it was played at the current site of College Ave Gym on Rutgers College Ave campus.
I want to reiterate that the podcast is called "Can't Read, Can't Write." So
yeah, no
but
big deal.
I notice you're not pushing back on the Havana syndrome that's caused by the audio at SHI Stadium.
No, that is 100% legitimate. It's been a big point of contention this year because it's gotten progressively worse, and it's bled from not only just SHI Stadium but also into the rack now. We have the same musical, mismatching. Like, it just feels like you're under constant psychological warfare. It's terrible.
Did they bring the cannon and whatever that godforsaken air raid siren is? Because
thankfully not. But it is
train horn.
Yeah.
Whatever. What is this, Purdue?
NJ Transit, man. Come on.
Yeah, I don't get it either. But I guess it's just like the loudest thing that was not artificial that they could think of to put in a stadium. Yeah, I don't know.
It's dumb.
It was brutal. It genuinely was brutal. I cannot say enough about how much fun it was to tailgate there, and then how little fun it was to be inside the stadium. And that was watching Kenneth Walker go for 97 yards and dap up a dude on his way to the end zone. Still not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember that.
I didn't realize how great the tailgating setup is around the stadium compared to a lot of schools. Like,
oh yeah.
Like when you go elsewhere, you're like, wait, you got to go all the way here. Like, this is where you got to walk from. You got to walk a mile and a half to get to the stadium. Like, everything. Like, I think Rutgers fans don't realize how good they got it tailgating wise. Talk about the Michigan State tailgating scene for those who will be going, or just for those who want to know.
Yeah, I mean, look, super biased in that I think it's pretty great. You are reserving your most prime tailgating spots for the super wealthy, but as you head out onto the quad, so we're talking, I don't know, maybe like a 10-minute walk into the stadium, you're going to find plenty of people happy to pass around beverages to you. But look, I think weather's not looking to be super promising, but I can assure you that those who are there tailgating are very friendly, and not there's only one school that we are real assholes to. I don't know if I can say that. Sorry, my bad.
Oh, no, you can say whatever you want.
Up a storm, man.
Surprised we haven't yet.
Let's get into some predictions. We've kind of talked through a lot of the elements. Is there before we get into predictions, is there anything you would like to know about Rutgers before we give a prediction or maybe lock in what we think is going to happen?
Well, now that I know where the first football game was actually played, that answers my primary question. I would ask, if Michigan State's successful on offense, I know there's a bunch of things that Michigan State needs to do for itself for that to happen, but what is Rutgers not doing well, or what battle are they most likely to lose for that to be the case?
the battle that they're going to lose is being able to generate pressure but not able to get home. We've had, like last week, for example, Luke Altmaier, not necessarily known as the fastest guy, not necessarily known as the, a rusher, 11 rushes, 79 yards, because he just found a way to, avoid the pressure a little bit. And then we had no lane integrity on the outside. He was just having 14, 15-yard wide open lanes. If that happens against Aiden Childs, we're going to be in big trouble because he's a much better athlete. He, like you said, he's been rushing more the last few games than he had earlier in the season. So if that happens, like Aiden Childs could just maybe write his own number down for the amount of rushing yards he has in the game. So that's my biggest fear.
Okay.
Yeah. Rutgers historically has not, or under Greg Schiano specifically, has not been able to defend a mobile quarterback whatsoever.
Yep.
You could blame the linebackers. You could blame injuries. There's no rhyme and reason behind it, to be honest. I think it's just Greg Schiano sees a mobile quarterback and might shit his pants a little bit. But I'm looking now, like Aiden Childs his career high is 9 rushes for 57 yards and a touchdown against Boston College this year. I think he might do better than that, to be honest, just because they struggle so much with stopping a mobile quarterback. And like Mike said, they'll pressure him, and all of a sudden this guy's running down the field for 20 yards. It's like, what the fuck? What happened?
Yeah, the contain on the D line isn't great, as they're not rushing well as a unit together.
Yeah. You could blame injuries. You could blame everything. Like they're
not rushing well, and it's almost like they're rushing with blinders on, because the amount of times they over pursue, like they run either past the quarterback or they like side swipe him. Like they don't, they're not good at like directing momentum in a way that could actually get a sack. So I think you'll be surprised the amount of times like your quarterback does have to like step up or has to like roll out. But we're not going to get many sacks. Like this just been that way all year. I think the most sacks we've had in a game was against Minnesota, and that was 3 or 4. But we didn't have a first half sack. Everything came in the second half after we made some adjustments. Even Max Brosmer, like Ethan Garbers carved us up, the quarterback for UCLA. Max Brosmer carved us up. Even the quarterback for Washington carved us. Like everybody was able to just like run for whatever, 2nd and 9, we go into like, not a prevent, but, pass defense, and, there's nobody counting for the quarterback. It's
absolutely telling me my hope was dead and you're bringing some back.
There's like no pass rush moves either. It's literally just like basically a bull rush, and it's like, hey, I got around him. Look at that. And then it's like, let's try it again. Like, no, it's got stuffed the next 8 times. It's the 9th time that's going to work. I can feel
that'll
it.
work.
Like, it's insane.
So let's get into some predictions. Mike, you're the guest. How do you think this game's going to play out? Give us your score prediction.
This is really hard. I assume that we're kindred spirits and that hope is routinely beaten out of us through the course of a year, despite coming into the year with it. And, this game feels really important for Michigan State. Like, I mean, it's a first year of a head coach. Getting those bowl practices is a big deal. That keeps dudes together a little bit longer. And it's at home. It's senior day. It's, of course, on Thanksgiving weekend, which is never well attended. So, this just feels like a chance at some real heartbreak. But I'm going to choose to believe in culture. I'm going to choose to believe that Jonathan Smith has that going for him. And I'm going to say that we find the end zone. I'm going to go 27-20 Michigan State.
Okay.
Also, I think it's super fishy, though, that we opened favored in this game. Based upon, what was that? I'm saying I'm a homer, but what's Vegas doing?
I was listening to a bunch of podcasts in the Spartans ecosystem this week, and I think the first one I listened to was by Locked On Spartans, and I think the title of their pod was "How Are We a Favorite Against Rutgers This Week?" or something like that. So
Matt Sheehan, friend of the program, people should check him out. But yes. Also equally baffled by that opening line.
How do you think it's going to go, Rich? Give us your score prediction.
Traditionally, I feel like Schiano has done pretty well against first-year head coaches. This year, though, he's been pretty bad at coaching, so I don't really like his odds here. Mobile quarterback, like I said before. Michigan State has everything to play for. They're going for a bowl game. Rutgers is going for Phoenix or Detroit, basically. I think that's already almost set in stone. It's probably going to be Phoenix, but besides the point, I just don't see Rutgers getting up for this game, especially after last week. It's a bunch of injuries late game. I don't know if those guys are going to be healthy. Probably not, if I had to guess. Losing's contagious, and when you lose like that in a heartbreaker, on top of the injuries, I just can't see them pulling this one out. I'm going to say similar to what you said, Mike, and I'm going to say 28-21 though.
So
Going
I think
Price is Right rules on me.
I think the tangible incentive for this game is clearly in Michigan State's favor. They win, they go to a bowl game, they get all that extra practice time. It's a big step forward for a first-year head coach. I think where the big step, the motivation for Rutgers is, can we make a step forward from last season? This was supposed to be a year. This program took a step forward. We went 6-6 in the regular season last year, won a bowl game to get to 7-6. Greg Schiano has blown two or three games this season, snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Last week was another example of that. I think he needs a game to kind of quell those, naysayers in the community and covering the program. So I do think that he'll have his team ready. I just don't know who on that team will be actually playing, because we dealt with a lot of injuries last week too. A lot of guys got taken off the field. By the last play, we were, in prevent, or we rushed 7 in a play that we allowed a touchdown, but we had like 3 guys in the secondary who had like a combined like 4 tackles on the season. It was just really, really bad. And I think I'm exaggerating there a bit, but there's been so many injuries also in our secondary. I don't feel great about this. I just think that Schiano finds a way to win this game, and I'll probably regret this, but I'm going to say 24-20, Rutgers wins. I don't feel great about it. It would also make my over/under bets from before the season at 6.5 work out. So I'm sucking on a little.
I see the motivation.
Yeah, we're gonna win. We're gonna win, and I'm just preparing to be hurt this weekend, as I think we all are. But Mike, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Where can Rutgers fans find your work and find you on social media?
Yeah, you can check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram at Spartan_pod. We're on Blue Sky now at Spartan Pod. And then you can, of course, follow the podcast. Just subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Can't Read, Can't Write. And if you like Schadenfreude, you'll enjoy listening to us. So,
yeah, if you like the Are You Screw podcast, you're going to love their podcast. It's a very similar style, a lot of humor baked in.
Though they're so creative.
Yes,
the voiceover work, the song. I mean, it's shout out to the Are You Screw podcast. They're great.
They are.
Not that you guys aren't also great. Just
we're okay.
No, we appreciate that.
Rich,
where does the name Can't Read, Can't Write come from?
I knew you knew to tweet.
Where's Can't Read, Can't Write come from? So obviously, at Michigan State, if you ever see a Spartan anywhere, you can say "Go Green" and they will say "Go White" back to you. So when you're in a stadium, you'll hear a lot of "Go Green, Go White" chants. The super arrogant elitist folks down in Ann Arbor decided to tweak that and make it "Can't Read, Can't Write" instead of "Go Green, Go White."
Interesting.
And as if like math is different at their university or something. Like it truly baffles me.
They teach the real trigonometry down, and
yeah. So we decided to lean into it. Like we are 3 idiots who happen to care a lot about our school. We'll drink plenty of alcohol while recording, and
See, I keep telling Mike we got to do that, and he's just so against getting belligerent.
No, I'm not against it. It's just normally it's either before I'm working or at my lunch break, so it's a little tough to go into.
Yeah, I only heard invitations to do it. But yeah, so we just leaned into it. Though there are some people on message boards who think that we're like a low key Wolverine podcast, and we've been doing this for 6 years now. Like, yeah, right. So,
Jeez.
Yeah.
They're trying to destabilize the Michigan State institution. One
as if
podcast
Michigan
at a
State
time.
isn't capable of doing that on their own. So,
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah, infamously, yeah. Same here though. We've both dealt with our fair amount of scandals the last decade plus. But
That happens.
thanks again for coming on, Mike. Really appreciate it. Hopefully it's a clean game. Nobody gets hurt. But given how history has been this season, I don't expect that to happen. But hopefully it's just nothing really gruesome. Hopefully it's just no bones out of skin. Hopefully it's just bumps and bruises. But
yeah. Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
anytime. This has been another edition of the Knight Report podcast. Signing off.